Very good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming for this occasion, which is a momentous occasion for IIIT-B. As you know, Professor Ramani has been attached to IIIT-B from a long time as a faculty, and moreover that he has also been guiding a PhD student. So, Professor Ramani, very good morning, and thank you for coming for this occasion, and we congratulate you from IIIT-B on this. And thanks to Professor Prof for coming and chairing this session. Professor Prof is chairing this session. So let me formally request our Professor Chandrasekhar, who has been working with Professor Ramani for guiding the students and all multiple works, to introduce Professor Ramani. Thank you, Dr. Chandrasekhar.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Das. I'm sure as we always begin such introductions, Dr. Ramani doesn't need any introduction, but still I will give it a shot. So it gives me immense pleasure actually to introduce Professor Ramani on this momentous occasion. Having had the privilege to be associated with him since my days at HP and his days at HP, I guess I earned this opportunity to do this honor. So as we all know, Dr. Ramani has been associated directly with IIIT-B since 2007, and so he was teaching MTech courses and is also co-supervising a couple of IIIT-B PhD students. But let me quickly rewind a few decades. Dr. Ramani earned his master's and doctoral degrees at IIT Bombay. He has worked as a researcher at the CMU and back home at TIFR, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. But his first high-impact contribution to India's internet journey started when he was with the National Center for Software Technology, NCST, as the founding director. At NCST, he played a key role in creating India's academic network, the ERNet, which brought internet to India. I'm sure he will have much more profound thoughts on that journey when he gives his address during this event. Okay. He moved to Bangalore in 2001 to serve as the first director of HP Labs, Hewlett-Packard Labs. In fact, I can probably share that that's when I had the privilege to see his passion for invention firsthand at that time. He has served as a member of the expert panel of advisors of the United Nations Task Force on ICT for Development, as president of Computer Society of India, and as president of International Council for Computer Communication. At IIIT-B, we have been privileged to have his association not only as a faculty member, but as guide who has helped setting us along the path of creating a significant mind share in his latest passion in the use of technology for education, along with Professor Prabhu and Professor Engineer Rao, I should add. It is notable that Dr. Ramani helped start the IEEE International Conference on Technology for Education right here at IIIT-B, which is into its 6th year right now. So before closing, a quick word about the Internet Hall of Fame. The Internet Hall of Fame is a recognition program and virtual museum that celebrates the living history of the Internet and the individual whose extraordinary contributions have made the Internet, its worldwide availability, and the use and its transformative nature possible. Dr. Ramani's honor has been in the Global Connectors category. This category recognizes individuals from around the world who have made major contributions to the growth, connectivity, and use of Internet, either on a global scale or within a specific region or a community. We are very honored to be associated with you, sir. Hearty congratulations on behalf of IIIT-B on being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Maybe at this time, I should also quickly slip in heartiest belated 75th birthday wishes too. Thank you.
Still young and active. Good. So I request Professor Prabhu to felicitate him with a nice book and speak about Professor Ramani a few words.
Dr. Das phoned me and said that Professor Sharagopan will not be in today, and that therefore I have to do the chairing of this particular event. Professor Ramani's Hall of Fame award, and we at IIIT-B kind of felicitating him for that and for many other things. He has been intimately associated with IIIT-B for several years now. It's a great honor for me, and I thank Debu for inviting me here. Professor Ramani is a legendary person. I mean, if you are in my age category, and if you are in a place like IIT Kanpur in 70s and 80s, you would know what I mean. When I was a graduate student doing my PhD at the University of Toronto in late 60s, there were experiments afoot. University of Toronto Computer Center and MIT, computer communication. And there was a felt need for establishing this kind of network for the purpose of communication. And the driving force for that was really the scientific community, the physicists, the chemists, and others, especially the physicists. They wanted a system which would enable quick communication, exchange of data, and so on. That's how the email system started. Those were not the days of VLSI systems, PCs, whatever, it was all mainframes. But the experiment was so important that a lot of universities ultimately got into the picture, and slowly, the internet developed and the email system developed. Remember that we're talking about that era. Now, Dr. Ramani was at NCST. This was in early 80s when you made the proposal. 83 as a matter of fact. And he said, this is very important for India. And it has to be for education, it has to be for research, it has to be for exchange of all kinds of information of relevance, of importance to scientists scattered all over. And the big activities, whether it is agro-sciences or other areas. And he made a proposal. And that's how the ERNET system, Educational and Research Network, was born. And he was the leader of that. And we were kind of watching this thing evolving. My colleagues were involved. Dr. Srivatsan, Dr. Bose was there, yeah, and there's a great deal of activity, and then slowly this thing, it was all dial-up network, then some leased line, then internet gateway, all these things. These teams from different IITs. There were 5 IITs, I think, if I remember, IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi, IIT-Bombay, and IISc, Indian Institute of Science. Then Department of Electronics itself was involved, and under your leadership, NCST. So this thing evolved, and we used to make fun of some of the things we observed. Email was a big thing at that time, and we said, the faculty were not very comfortable with computers. I mean, unless you were in a computer science faculty. So, but their students, graduate students, are very comfortable. So it was the students who would read the email for them and so on. And so we used to make fun of such people. But then an interesting thing happened. In many families, the kids went abroad. And the main mode of communication with mommy and daddy was email. And who picked it up very fast? It was the mothers. So they would go to the computer center and they would do all these things, and shaming the husbands who were faculty members, even professors at IIT Kanpur, not in computer science, but in other areas. So then, of course, we all felt we should not lag behind these ladies and so on. So we started picking up a lot of things. Anyway, that was the beginning of a revolution. And ERNET is now a big system in India. And the person who put together all these people from various IITs, Indian Institute of Science, Department of Electronics, and his own organization, NCST, which is now CDAC, headed by Rajat Muna, who was our student at IIT Kanpur. So he is the Director General there, and he has given glowing tributes to you. So, so he put together all these people, and then the ERNET system that we have today emerged. I mean, maybe old timers like me would have kind of from the sidelines watched the evolution of this happening, and Professor Ramani was at the helm of affairs. He was the leader. He was the person who gave vision to the community and so on. And this is just one of his achievements. You have talked about, I don't want to do that. We were very lucky that he joined us, and his passion for technology for education, he brought that conference, IIII.
T4E.
Yeah.
Technology for education.
T for education. Yeah. So we were very fortunate that he joined us. So it's a great honor for me really to speak about him and to recapitulate those good old days when things started happening and ultimately mushroomed out into a big activity. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Prabhu. Such a nice introduction and chairing the session. Yes, we have seen those. We are student at that time. You used to call it as a email, and later on we called it F-mail, because it was a not female mail, this was a floppy mail. By the floppy, it has to be carried to a room, another room, and is to be sent. So good. So now I request Professor Ramani to speak about those days and his experience and the path.
Good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me today and honoring me like this. I have very pleasant memories of many pleasant memories of my work at IIIT-B, and it opened an entirely new career in my life, the technology for education. I decided when I retired from HP that I ought to concentrate on one thing, and that one thing was the one I was most passionate about. So I was able to do something with the technology for education, particularly getting a lot of people interested in that. And I'm very happy to say that the 2009 conference we hosted here for the first time is now in the 6th year, and it's going to be held in December this year in Cochin. And therefore the T4E is running well. And so these are added to these many happy memories. This is one more occasion that I will remember with pleasure about IIIT-B. Now, let me say something at the risk of being blacklisted by Professor Prabhu. I don't know Professor Prabhu will ever say anything nice about me again, but let me say this. Recently I met Rajat Muna, who had been a student at IIT Kanpur and also later at IISc. He was an IIT Kanpur student, and at IIT Kanpur he was also doing, I think he had a fair amount of responsibility in the computer center. And he and I were remembering the good old days. Already, Debrata Das has mentioned it. Were you a student of IIT-K?
KGP.
KGP, okay.
Had a note.
Okay. So the real funny thing that happened was at IIT Kanpur. What happened was, as Professor Prabhu mentioned, the IRNET was managed by two professors from the electrical engineering department, Srivatsan and Bose. And they did very good work and very, very enthusiastic people. But the computer center guys were feeling left out. And there was a little interdepartmental rivalry. And one of the things was particularly students wanted to use email, but Srivatsan and Bose said, no, we don't have enough bandwidth and we're paying a lot of money and we won't let you guys use email. So someone from the Kanpur Computer Science Department and Computer Center had dropped in at NCST, and we were talking about this. And there is nothing that a service provider loves more than creating a rivalry among the user groups. So we did some mischief and suggested something, and we co-invented the idea of floppy mail. That the computer science students of IIT Kanpur would get their emails all into a floppy, put it into speed post. In those days, couriers would not go to Kanpur. Only speed post would go, and the speed post would take 2 to 3 days to come. And we would read the floppy off into the UUCP, and it'll go all over the world, and replies would come. And this made a huge difference, because the electrical engineering department was using dial-up. But there were worries about the quality of the connection, this, that, and so on, so on. They were fighting with the telecom department for a lease line, which the telecom would not give it to them.
58 kilobits per second. It was pretty slow. 58 kilobits per second was much slower, the dial-up.
What 58? In those days, we were worried. We got 2,400. We were happy on dial-up. 2,400 bits per second. And then what happened was, suddenly mail started appearing on US campuses. A lot of people who had been students of IIT Kanpur, had been colleagues, collaborators, and all that, they all got excited. There was a lot of buzz on the social communication groups of those days. SOC India, something, I forget what that was. And then it got to the newspaper somewhere. Somebody wrote a nasty mail, and it got published in the newspaper. Say, look at IIT Kanpur, the leading technological institution of India. They don't have an internet connection. They're using floppy mail. And this was, it was the most valuable and helpful contribution to the internet development in India. Because the telecom bosses read it and said, what the hell is happening here? Why is IIT Kanpur not getting a lease line? Within 15 days, there was a lease line to IIT Kanpur. So these were the fun days that Prof. Rajat Boona was at the other end of in those days. And he was remembering that when we met. Okay, now let me come back and briefly say something about what it is about and share a few thoughts with you. I think I got involved seriously with computer networking in 1971 mentally, but actually started doing some work in 73. I was a postdoc at CMU between 71 and 73, and I was at the user end. ARPANET was brand new. Perhaps the first connection of ARPANET was made in 1969. But it really reached many universities, like 5 or 6 universities in 71. And I must have been within the first 1,000 users of email and the ARPANET. And let's face it, ARPANET protocols gave birth to what later became the Internet protocols. They're very similar. And so I fell in love with the technology there. I saw one thing. This is not a technology that requires a great telecom infrastructure. This is really a technology which works with poor infrastructures. If there is noise on your line, it doesn't matter. If your line gets cut out for 2 hours at a time, it doesn't matter. It'll go around, route itself through some other indirect route. And this was an ideal technology for a developing country like India. So I thought we must do something about this. And my love has always been artificial intelligence, but I fell in love with the new technology of networking. And so I started spending some time learning about it and came back in 1973 to Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. Started putting together a team in computer networking, and told the boss, who was Professor Narasimhan at that time, we were part of the National Center for Software Technology and National Center for what was called Software Development and Computing Techniques, which was a part of TIFR. It was to later grow up and become an autonomous institute called National Center for Software Technology. But working at NCS-DCT, I told Professor Narasimhan, I think I should spend bulk of my time in computer networking. Assembled a team and started working. One of the earliest was great fun. We tried it and it worked. We worked with the first computer that Narayana Murthy seems to have worked, or maybe Narayana Murthy worked with one version earlier. I think he wrote a basic compiler for 3112, TDC 312. And we were working with TDC 316, which was the 16-bit version, and we tried to write communication software for the 316. And it was very easy to do that. And we got it running, and we persuaded the Bombay Telephones to give us a lease line, ran a remote station 20 kilometers away at the VJTI, started using it for education, and we realized, you know, there is such a thing as pure science, but there is no such thing as pure technology. Unless you have users using something and getting some benefit out of it, you don't really have an interesting technology. So we threw it open to VJTI students and faculty, and very soon we had 300 users on a little TDC 316 and a remote station which was running on 4,800 BPS modems. And it was used to, in addition, we started a part-time course teaching software technology to computer professionals. And this was all fun. That is how we started. To cut a long story short, we got involved with packet switching technology, saw the potential of satellites. There was a race between satellite technology on one hand and fiber optics on the other. And we were not quite, you know, when you go through a big revolution, you don't always notice that there is a revolution going on around you. You are just part of it. And it flows over you, and like a tsunami. When it's all over, you can look back and say, oh boy, it was a big tsunami. And the fiber optics revolution was coming. The satellite revolution was also coming. And we were excited about the satellites, partly because ISRO was very cooperative. And we got satellite channels and got a 3-station network between Delhi, Ahmedabad, and Bombay. Homemade hardware, homemade software, homemade hardware in the sense we bought the boards and assembled it, and made our own processors, wrote our own compiler, used an experimental language, and got 3-station packet switching network running by about 1981-82. And later, all this was a lot of hard work, years of work. But the fun thing that I did was turning up at the conference at a workshop at IDRC in Canada, International Development Research Center. They had called a conference on computer message systems. And the idea of message systems is very simply asynchronous communication. You fire off what you have, and it'll go sometime to the other end, like email, and somebody will reply and you will get it. I was very excited about the technology, and I had given talks from India over telecom lines to conferences elsewhere. So these guys must have heard me at one of the conferences, invited me there. So I go there at breakfast. There is an American, Miller and I sat together and we were chatting and we were telling each other about our work, and we were talking about essentially communication in developing countries. And we ran into an idea. Why not use satellites for just plain computer messaging and forget everything else? No voice communication, no synchronous communication. Let's make it asynchronous. So we came up with this crazy idea of a satellite which would go over the equator. The developing countries are all banded around the equator, and it would physically carry email. You upload your email and you'll get it there and sit in a disk or something like that. Flash memories were not there at that time. So it'll carry the disk memory and fly over, and maybe about 1 hour later when it goes over Fiji, it'll download the mail. It was called Low Altitude Data Satellite. Now it is called LEOS. Wikipedia calls it LEOS, Low Earth Orbit Satellites. So we wrote a paper. We said, okay, we have to give a talk in this workshop. We might as well give a talk on this. And we decided to write a draft. We wrote a draft of the paper that week, and we gave a talk there. And IDRC got so excited. They said, we are going to put all the money we have for developing country data communication into this idea. And they put the money into that. It took us 2 years to finally get the paper published at an international conference. And we did. The Radio Amateurs Relay League had something called the Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation. A very interesting group named Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War or something like that. They all got interested in this idea of developing country communication. They got some funding, raised money to launch 2 satellites, demonstrated that health communication can occur. They kindly invited me to go to Nairobi in 1980 something. And I went there, they demonstrated this. It was great fun to watch radio amateurs getting involved with a satellite. And something almost like this is the kind of satellite that students can put together at a university like this. And it was a couple of small satellites like that flown over a period of 5-6 years. And the basic idea was tried out and tested. Okay. And that's exciting to me partly because it was exercise of some innovation. And but the tragedy is that I hardly did anything for that satellite, apart from writing the first paper, writing it and forgetting it. I do think we are coming back to those days when those things might be very valuable, because as Debu will tell us that you can take the fiber to the curb in front of your house. You can even take it inside your house and terminate it on a Cisco router or something like that. But you can't take the fiber to the pocket. And our smartphones are all in our pocket. And ultimately, we need bandwidth to the pocket. And therefore, when something like the Himachal disaster occurred last year, and the cell phone towers run out of their diesel fuel, and a village of 1,000 people get cut off for a whole week and nobody knows whether they're alive or dead, a lot of problems arise. We have to ask the question, why can't we get satellites talking to our smartphones directly? There is nothing impossible about it. As a matter of fact, in the US, you can rent a cell phone. I forget the company's name. You can rent a satellite phone per week, and they will you pay a certain amount. I forget how much it is. You can carry it around and talk on that. It gives you voice communication, and you can carry it anywhere in the world. It will work. And if you're willing to risk your neck, you can even carry it past the customs, as many people do. The terrorists constantly do that. Only it costs up $2, $1.50 or something like that per minute. And over national borders, it might cost more. But within the US, I think it costs $1.50. And with the technology, it is there. There is a handheld handset, and there is a satellite. And you communicate. That is a low Earth orbit satellite. Why can't we have? There are great ideas in satellite communication. The Russians had worked with satellites, which are very peculiar. They don't go in a circular orbit. They go up in an orbit like that. The idea is they wanted to spend 90% of the time over Russia, and 10% of the time zooming around the rest of the Earth, and they have a long time over Russia. And using ideas like this, it's possible to build a system where almost any smartphone can, it doesn't have to be a smartphone really, a good phone can get a message across. But it requires all kinds of compromises, design compromises. One of them is that voice requires a fair amount of number of bits, at least 10 kilobits per second by satellite, by cell phone standards. Whereas a text message costs nothing. When we were writing this paper about satellites, I had looked up all the telegrams being sent in India in those days, where telegram was the main electronic means of communication, could have been sent over 164 kilobit line. And this satellite could have provided that 64 kilobit. So in other words, if you take all the SMS that is going around today in India, I don't know if, I suspect all of them can be handled by a few low Earth orbit satellites. But even if you don't have all the SMS messages going around, you can have some premium SMS messages. Pay 3 rupees and you can send an SMS from anywhere to anywhere. And it's entirely possible, the technology is there. But there is a peculiar thing, as many of you who have worked with commercial companies would know. You never go and plan to sell peanuts when you can be selling beer or whiskey. There is a lot more money in selling beer or whiskey, not in selling peanuts. And therefore, the companies, big companies, never want to innovate at the low end. They usually want to innovate at the high end. We love the guys who have need for video. We love the guys who want smartphones. We love the guys who have a high bandwidth requirement. You want 4G, we will work for you. But if you want only to pay 3 rupees for an SMS, we don't care for you. Your 3 rupees doesn't matter. So I think there are peculiar problems on innovating for developing countries. So I wanted to share some of those ideas. But let me not forget the main thing. Main thing is, what is this internet thing about? Connecting India to the internet. There are lots of things involved in that. When you connect a country to the internet, you are learning, you are inducting a technology, and you are adopting it, you are adapting it, you are innovating a little bit over it. Something succeeds, some things fail, you are educating, and you are carrying the know-how to business and industries.
You go ahead, Professor Ramani, you go ahead.
Right. So I think a lot is involved, but there are moments of excitement, like the moment of excitement when we got a connection over, we ran a very peculiar thing running TCP over X.25 because IP was almost illegal in India. There was a Telecom board member, Kulkarni, who gave a talk in Bombay. I asked him, sir, when are you going to allow TCP IP to run over lease lines? I was actually running TCP IP over lease lines. We had his lease lines, we were running it, but not legally. So I asked him, and he said, we'll never allow that. You know, TCP IP is not an international protocol. It is a US protocol. And you have to use CCITT protocols only, X.25, X.400, etc., etc. But then things change. One day, chairman of VSNL had put in a lot of money and he was running X.400 email and an X.25 network. And we found it was cheapest to use X.25 network. So we took an account on X.25 and we could call Amsterdam. And we ran TCP over it, legal or otherwise, and we ran our mail and we made an internet connection and it worked. And within a year we were able to run TCP IP over a dial-up line to the United States. And meanwhile we were dialing up all over India. We had a UCP network, and lease lines started coming up between the IITs and the IISc and NCST, and we set up an email hub, and we set up internet gateway, and this is the technical work that was actually involved in the years of 1987 and 1988, which made the physical communication. Let me touch upon some of the physical excitement. I'll take a few minutes more if you don't mind. And physical excitement was, there was a review committee for the Internet project. This was all part of a much bigger project. There were, as I was going to say, there were 5 IITs and Indian Institute of Science who were all partners in the Education and Research Network project, which had been launched by Government of India in '86. And all this work we did at NCST, whatever we did at NCST, we did as a part of the ERNet. ERNet paid our salaries. And we coordinated very closely 6 academics. The names I remember are, to start with Kanpur, it was Srivatsan and Bose, and there was Birendra Jain at B.N. Jain at Delhi, and Raghavan in Madras, and Ramakrishnan in the Department of Electronics, and Professor Farooqi at Kharagpur, And what other IITs am I missing? Bombay, it was Mendiratta in Bombay. So, and Anurag Kumar at IISc. So we all worked very closly together. And that is the story of the IIRDAT, I mean very briefly, and our part in it. The IIRDAT team at NCST was headed by me, and we had the fortune of sitting in the city of Bombay, where telecom was very easily available, where we were also a software technology institute, and therefore were very comfortable with Unix, and had perhaps one of the biggest Unix computers in India at that time. And we could easily run all the BSD software. And they paid $110 to buy BSD software. BSD software had this magic. US government had paid the Berkeley guys to put in a whole lot of computer networking software into the Unix. And that was BSD, the Berkeley Systems distribution. We could buy it for $110. The reel, the postage, the software, everything. The software is free technically. That brings me to this great US idea that when you use taxpayers' money and do government-funded research, it is not your property. You don't lock it up. You don't minimize its impact. You go and throw it open free so that every taxpayer and every company can use it. Not just every taxpayer in the United States and every company in the US, but anyone in the world. And this is a great idea. It is an old idea that universities have been practicing for 600 years. But recently there are temptations to lock up knowledge and convert it into cash and so on. But I think there are times when you have to do that. There are times when you have to throw it open. And the US gained an enormous lot by throwing it all open. Why did they throw it open? There was a protocol war. There was a CCIDT standard called ISO 7-layer protocols. And we were compelled by the government of India to use ISO protocols. The IIRDAT project was for 1 year headed by a man who was a PNT officer. And if we said TCP/IP, he would have killed me. And there was great pressure on us to use ISO protocols. But you write for ISO protocols. Someone in UK sent me a quote for £600,000 for buying ISO protocols. And Japan was behind ISO protocols. Europe was behind ISO protocols. All the telecom administrations of the world would get together every year in Geneva and say, only ISO, not this American protocol. And this was going on. But finally, who won the battle? Who won the protocol war? Because when you offer $110 worth of software and you give £600,000 of software, you know what we vote for? We all vote for that. Protocols are adopted, ideas are adopted when you share them openly. Open systems have a great value. So I wanted to share that idea. And there is only one thing I think I should say. Along with ideas, there are also moments of fun, there are moments of pleasure and surprise. There was, I almost came to this and drifted a bit away. I'll come back to this and finish my talk. Around 1991 or something like that, there was a review committee. Rajaraman was in that, and I think Rajaraman was there. And there was also, he has been a member of a review committee later on also. There was Colonel B.K. Roy, who is a founder of HCL. And he had been a secretary to the UP government earlier, and a very interesting technical officer, and probably 30 years older than I am. I don't know, maybe 20 years older than I am. And he had come as a member of the committee, and we had set up some demos. One of them was Unix chat running over the internet to some graduate students somewhere in the US. We had persuaded the poor bloke to stay awake till 2 o'clock at night. And so that at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Colonel B.K. Roy could have a demo of online chat. So I got Colonel B.K. Roy to sit there and do Unix chat. And this student talked to him. It was very exciting. When it was all over, B.K. Roy put his hand on my shoulder. He said, Ramani, I know exactly how you feel, he said. this talking to someone over the continents and through a very tenuous link or a very small bit rate, how much? We probably use 50 bits per second or something. And having a chat with somebody, it still touches you. And he says, I know how you feel, he says. Then he told me his story. His story was he had been a student at Banaras Hindu University in the engineering college. And there was no cot in his room in the hostel. There was a mattress on the floor. Next to it, there was a fairly big radio transmitter which he had assembled and a radio receiver. He was a radio amateur. And he used to be in the evenings, he would sit there, and I don't know whether he used Morse or whether he used a microphone. Whatever he did, he was in touch with lots of people all over the world. And one day, he told his contact across, saying, Louis, your signal strength is very high today. What is happening? So Louis told him, I used to be in Colombo till recently. This week I have come to Delhi. And that's why the signal strength is high. And where are you? He said, Banaras. Oh, I'm going to be coming to Banaras soon. I will visit you. I want to look at your equipment. And this guy was very delighted, B.K. Roy. He was very happy, looking forward to Louis' visit. And except one fine morning, the registrar came to his hostel room and said, hey, Roy, get up. What's happening here? Come with me. Principal wants you. And marched him out of the principal's room. There was chaos all over the place. There was the district superintendent of police and the district commissioner, who is the equivalent of the district collector, and the principal, everybody anxiously waiting for Roy to come. Roy comes in. He says, what have you been doing? You built a radio transmitter and you're operating it here. He says, you can't keep it in your hostel room. Bring it to the physics lab. Let's keep it in a decent place. Visitors have to see it. So very soon the radio transmitter moved to the physics lab. The problem was, Louis turned out to be Lord Louis Mountbatten, Viceroy of India. And on the internet, there is a New Yorker cartoon which shows a big dog sitting at the terminal. And you can type that. And the dog looks at a small dog nearby and says, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. And internet, everything is equal. When you're talking to somebody over a net like that, or a democratic network like that, everyone is equal. And there are moments of excitement like this. And no story that we have from the internet side which can equal B.K. Roy's story. Fantastic story. I'm now trying to look at B.K. Roy. He's somewhere there. There was an email from him 3 years ago. I have located that, but I don't know where he is. I wrote to Rajiv Sangal, send him a copy of what I have written about this Louis Mountbatten story, saying we must track Colonel B.K. Roy again. We have to find out and get him to talk at BHU. So that is it. With that, I will wind up. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramani. Such a wonderful memories and the starting of our net and also the internet in India. And great. So it's simply great. And we are really thankful to you for coming and sharing all those things. So good afternoon, everyone, and we are left with 20 minutes, and I'll try to do justice within the. Do this, and please ask me questions here, and I'll give a interesting twist to what Professor Ramani presented in my starting, then about the internet. So the background of internet, I'll talk about the internet challenges. I will skip this one very fast because of interest of time. What next? Where we are moving? Telecom networks, practically what they have talked about by this time, that within 4 or 5 years, the whole backbone of the classical telecom network will collapse into the internet. So why and how to do that? And such a 110 years old network, how it is going into it. Then IP-based mobilities and all kind of things, software-defined networks, and different applications we are talking about, and we'll conclude at the end. This is the classical telecom networks which we know. What I want to tell you is this. Look at this. I'm slowly revealing the network one by one. this is the line. This line is important. Below this line is called transport layer, they're calling, means data, the voice, which we send when we are talking on the phone. And above that line is called signaling. That is called control layer. Okay. When you dialing any number or on the phone, you will find first a beep, beep, beep sound. What does it mean? Means your number which you are dialing to your destination, it comes here, and from here, your dotted line, it goes to the control plane. And the control plane finds out where is the destination is, and it finds out all the way where is there is a 64 kilobits per second without compression, available or not. If it is available, then you hear the ringtone. If it is not available, then it says all the lines on this route is busy or the destination is busy. Then you try after some time. So what does it mean? That means that this control plane plays a very big role for your successful transmission of any telecom connections from source to final destination. And if these couple of nodes, if I can look at, this is hierarchically goes one after the other, and this may be a for city there will be a central nodes, and every node has a replica also like this for redundancy. But if somebody damages this, then whole things goes. Okay, so that was the fear in US. Okay, so this ever failure of the control plane, if happens by something, then that was the fear in US during the Cold War time. That they thought that there should be some alternative way of communication which will be away from the central controlled communication. This was a centrally controlled. So they thought that we'll come out with the communication networks which they didn't reveal. That went on in the defense, which is recently classified, and all those things are leaking out from later on. Then they came out and told. So what was the fear? The fear is that a control node and multiple voice data nodes, failure of a centrally located control node may defunct multiple voice nodes. So then your call will not go. So that was the fear. The ever failure of communication was the fear in US during Cold War time. That was 1960s, around that. And then US formed an advanced research project for different research projects. One of them, without telling anything to the professors and scientists, they said, please develop a network which is distributed, not centrally controlled, and it will be used for resource management in 4 or 5 universities. The 4 or 5 universities was coming up with a good computational systems, and we will connect them. All the other universities will be connected to this network, and they told like that, but internally background, generally government doesn't disclose what is running on the background, or the defense people. So this was the cause. The task given by the DARPA, Defense Advanced Research, the design a distributed network where a node or a link failure will not affect the neighboring node or link. And in the name of utilizing different computing facilities of the universities, then they said that you use this, but background it was running in 1960s and 65 till 65. So this is the internet is the Cold War baby, which came to know later on, but it was huge use. So referred as, then in FNC, the Federal Network Council gave the name internet officially, but before that people have been using it from 1968 till today. So this is the background of the internet. What was the background is that from centrally controlled to a network which is a highly distributed, means not a central one point of failure. So look at, this is the classical picture all of us know. So this is the where if I want to communicate to here, I go router to router and reach at here. So how I go, I reach to any router runs his own routing algorithm, find out which is the shortest path, like this, shortest path, and comes and reach at here. So every router takes its own decision, which path shall I go. So what is the basic difference between the telecom? Telecom, before I start, I know which path I will go. But in internet, I don't know which path I will take. Every router takes its decision. So as a result of which it is distributed, not a single point of failure, but it is very slow because every router takes the decision. So this is the problem happened. Sorry. Now I will give you another logic why internet became the popular later on. This is the technology used in classical telecom called time division multiple access. Very simple. This is the x-axis is the time, and if there are 6 users, user 1, user 2, user 3, 4, 5 and 6 in the telecom network, say again those This everybody will be given as a 1 second time. So for an example, and if I am not talking, but I am this user 2, this is not talking, but this time is allocated. And again the same 2 will be allocated here, but he is not talking. The drawback of this is that even though I am not talking, this time is allocated to me, but I am not able to give this time to anyone else. This is allocated officially for me. If you look at your telephone conversation, you hardly speak 30% or maximum 40%. Internationally, it has been calculated. 60% of time you are silent. Either you are listening or you are thinking what to speak. But if you look at your telephone bill, you pay with respect to time. Even though you don't speak, but 1 minute time you have telephone bill has come, you might have spoken for 30% of the 1 minute, but you are paying the bill. But the advantage is that you know the exact delay when you will get your chance to transmit. But disadvantage is that even though you are not talking, you are paying. So this one led to a huge business world problem. The business world said no. They came out with the packet switching. This is a classical circuit switching, the packet switching concept, that whoever transmits like this is a laptop or a PC, and this is a video phone. They are congregating the packets, and this is called statistical multiplexing. Word is used. Statistics word is generally when we use to find out an average or something like that. What does it mean? Means that my this PC is sending packet in a certain speed. My video is sending a packet in certain speed. My mobile phone sending a packet in a certain speed. Speed means the bit rates, different bit rates, and they are averaged out at here, and according to that availability bounded, they pushed out. So as a result of which, who has a packet he pushed in, not like TDMA. TDMA means if I do not have a packet also, I am wasting time. But in packet switching, who has a packet, who will come in. So your channel utilization become very high. So this is the thing which made the business people thinking across the world, hey, telecom is a costly proposition to the customer. So now bring all those telecom to the internet. So that was the cause for which voice over IP was born. But voice over IP was not good till today because that internet is slow. So now the research and all those things came from there. So from there, let me go quickly to show you this is the future. Future means the classical telecom network will collapse into IP backbone, and all your applications like your ticket booking, your presence, your locations, all kind of applications will be different servers, and you will be in the last mile or LAN, like in a GSM network or a 3G network or Wi-Fi network, or you will be in the satellite networks, 3G, 4G, all kind of these are all access networks we call, and this will be your IP backbone, and this is your these things. This is the overall picture which is you are heading for, and whole telecom networks will be inside this classical internet protocol backbone. And why? Because this business is driving that. Because when you are now, if you look at our internet bill, how many kilobytes you have downloaded or uploaded according to 4G, 2G. Never they say how many minutes or seconds you are connected to the networks. So that was the fundamental difference between the time and the bytes which led us to this. But this has a challenge which I said it is slow because it is a distributed network. And now I will quickly glance through this. I will challenges of current internet, and quickly I will go to the energy efficient, separation of identity. I'll go to one slide where I have just made a quality of service. Let me go to the one slide where I summary of major challenges. All those slides which I showed you before with these are the 5 major challenges. There are so many challenges. End-to-end quality of service, present and future applications. We don't know what are we know present applications, future applications like gaming. A lot of different games are coming up, and the delay, end-to-end delay has to be better than the voice. Means 50 millisecond. International standards say voice is 150 millisecond over the internet, but the gamings are so fast, like racing, 2 friends, 2 kids are playing 2 different parts of the world. The delay has to be 50 milliseconds only. So these kind of applications, end-to-end QoS. IP-based mobility. Classic telecom mobility handoffs are very much well studied, well established, almost done. But IP-based mobility, when I am moving from a circuit switch networks to the packet switch networks where a lot of distributed net protocols are there, and with the heterogeneous network. Heterogeneous means I am now sitting on Wi-Fi, I am moving out to the 4G LTE or WiMAX or 3G to completely 2 different protocol stacks. Handoff is slow. And handoff timing, they are telling if your speed is 50 millisecond end to end, your handoff has to happen less than that. So these kind of is the IP-based mobility is a huge challenge will come. Privacy and security. Internet security is a problem till today, and also it will remain problem. So, and also the privacy. Recently you must have seen the newspaper, one of the politicians' things was cracked and it is all on the line. And now the scalability. Before I go into the scalability by 2020, look at this. 100 gigabits is, sorry, 1000 gigabits is 1 terabyte. 1000 terabyte is 1 petabyte. And 1000 petabyte is 1 exabyte. We have already reached to here. I'll show you next slide. Already reached to here. And now 1000 exabyte is 1 zettabytes and 1000 zettabytes is this. So 10 to the power 15 into gigabytes is your zettabytes. We are not far away. We are already here. So look at this. So we have reached here. I'll show you the next slides. And it's pretty mind-boggling. And scalability is another huge challenge. Why? Now we have almost this PCs and laptops, tablets, servers. If I add up all those things, I have the lacks of space. 4 billion mobile plus, and it is moving towards smartphones. Well, everybody will have internet connections. This is tomorrow's, not yet come. The standards are going on. Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communication, device-to-device communication, ... They have given different names and all. 75 billion standing on the boundary to enter into the internet. By 2020, the standard is done. Before that standard will be done, right? This is 2018 or 2016. So look at this. Only this much has reached to exabytes. And if this one 75 billion means how many times? 15 times. Just think of. I'm just giving you the. Then the scalability in the sense means what will be the routers, switches, how they will work, how they will first. So some answers while looking at the technology I'll talk about. And this will be the main cause of failure. All these things are fine. People will work, find out the protocols and all kind of things. But the energy, it may consume highest energy among all the service industry. Means what I mean, service industry means railways, all these kind of things, different service industry. It is now in the second after railway in Europe. Telecom networks means routers, switches, powers needed to run your handheld devices and all. So it may cross if we reach to these numbers. So the highest energy. And this will be the cause, main cause, because we are rural India and all as such is. And this is the cause. Look at 2009, we are 0.09 exabytes. 2014, 3.6 exabytes. So how many times? 40 times in 5 years. And this will not, I don't think it's exponential, it will go something like vertical when the Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communication will come up. The curve will be much steeper. So smart homes, these are things you know, so many things. Who are the people who are going in? Next picture is little scary. Next picture, which is maybe one of the things which is looks like the patient sleeping. You can see it here. How many sensors connected? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7. One in a normal condition when he is sleeping, 10 to 11 sensors are connected. All are going to the cloud. Internet through the, because hospitals are not able to run their IoT internet system. So I'm just showing you, this is called body area networks, and there are, and at 2020 there will be 700 million people above the age of 65 or 70 or 80 or something like that. This is a smart planet. 75 billion I'm talking about, from where it will come, and this will be instrumented. Instrumented means every house and output, input, all those things will have one sensors. And interconnected, all these sensors are interconnected and intelligent, because they have to take decisions. All those things has to happen. So look at the smart planet people are talking about. Look at the complexity of the load will come over the internet. Now just started a few places. So now I'm coming to the topic. Internet of tomorrow, how to solve this complex problem. Divided the whole thing into two parts. For understanding, let us divide into two parts. A for access network, B for backbone. Like ABCD we study in the schools. So I thought A for access networks, that is last mile, and the rest of the thing is backbone. If we divide this into two categories, access networks means your sensors, your mobile phone, your laptop connected to Wi-Fi or LTE or WiMAX is called your access networks, and what technology is used and what is going to happen in future. So I'll start from this access networks, and now I'll show you this. Let us start from the handheld devices. As I started from access network, let us start from the handheld devices like this or this one. Presently, till today, whatever application like your mail, your browsing, if you are doing a chat, you are talking, all comes to a single queue. If your email is standing at here, then it will be first go out, then comes your browsing, then your voice, you are talking to somebody. So all these things, according to they arrive first in, first out. But in your future architecture, this is the next generation which will come out very shortly, there will be a here called classifier. So any kind of application you are going to send, they will be, according to the protocol, they may divide into 4 categories or maybe 5 categories, maybe 9 categories according to that protocol. So let us say in the Wi-Fi, they are thinking of classifying into 4 categories. Highest priorities to the voice, video, FTP, then the browsing. And according to the priority, you will go out. So this is true. This is in WiMAX, it will be 5 classifications. In LTE 4G advanced, it will be 9 classification of applications. Any application on this world you think of, they will categorize according to their priority based QoS end to end into 9 categories. And inside your system, all will come in your handle. This is your, I'm starting from the mobile handle. So this is classifier, it will put onto the queues. And according to the scheduling algorithm at here, the scheduler means who will go ahead of whom. Like we make 9 queues, okay, this is the VIP queue. So they will go ahead of the next VIP queue, next VIP queue, like that. They will go to the networks. So this is the first change will happen to your handheld devices. Next comes from the moment you go from handheld devices, this is, I am showing a 4G, different kind of network. Again, they have also different queues. This is called your handheld device, subscriber station, and this is your base station, written here base station. So classifications and all kind of things. And now from handheld devices, you want to get connected to the networks. And here I have written that there are 2 kinds of networks will be there. One is big base station you have seen, which is connecting us over a 2 to 3 kilometers radius. But the moment the radius becomes more, then your bit rate becomes low because of the wireless channel conditions. So what they are planning of, they will bring a small base station, they call it as a femtocell or picocell, they give different name they have given, into your home. And this side, you can see this side is a different color of frequency, this side is different color of frequency. This one may be connected by the fiber to here or maybe by the wireless 700 megahertz, and then other side the green one will be 2.4 gigahertz. So these 2 different frequencies, so they can come, this one will be point to point, so this high frequency, and this one will go up to 1 gigabits plus, still tested in the labs and some field trials, not commercially available in a mature way. The moment it matures, wireless is not yet matured so much. You can see in the Wi-Fi going up and down very frequently. Even the Wi-Fi is a 10 years old technology by this time. So wireless is very difficult to predict. So in that respect, the moment it matures and come to this, at home, I don't need more than a gigabit if I get a very good gigabit dedicated line. Because 2-3 high density TVs and also 2-3 laptops you want to connect to the outside world. So this is maybe enough, okay. So this like this, it will be connected to the internet. So what we discussed, the architecture of this and the access networks to reach to the backbone. The moment you reach to the backbone, and another thing I want to discuss is that about the mobility. Different network. You see, this is a one network at home. You come out from the home base stations, what happens? For an example, let me say that morning you went for a jogging out of home, you went to the park and you are in the 3G network, say. Okay, so look at this. This is your this light blue color is your 3G network. So, and this is your at home your Wi-Fi, and you drove to office and you are going through 4G network and mixture of 3G network. This 4G network is overlapped over the 3G networks, and again coming back to your office. Okay, so home, jogging, home, driving, office, back. And multiple wireless technologies are available. Simple look at it, Wi-Fi, 3G, 4G, this is 4G. And which one shall I pick up and why? This is another set of, because energy is a major problem and different energy is consumed by the different technologies and different bit rates. So now instead of service provider deciding what you should pick up, now you will keep your options according to battery available with you in your systems and the money you are in your pocket. According to that, you will set your mobile handset when you leave. So that will be user driven. That is not being done yet. So like this, you move operating on 3G, then you come home, then you automatically switch as you set off. Now you got wake up Wi-Fi because you're on the boundary of the Wi-Fi. The moment you get the Wi-Fi signal, then you picked up to the Wi-Fi, connect to the Wi-Fi, then you move. This is all tomorrow's, okay? And continue the videos and all. Now you come to the 3G and 4G. You see two greens. Now these two greens, 3G Wi-Fi, both the signals are hit here, but now I am going out of the, now my WiMAX connected to the WiMAX now. So 3G and WiMAX available, but I connected to the WiMAX, but my battery went down, so I cannot communicate to WiMAX, so I went back to the 3G. And then I come to office and plug into the power. So combinations of power, bitrate, your pocket money, all those things we as a user will decide. It is not so easy because there will be a lot of bloodshed in the service providers, which Sridhar was on that day presenting, that service provider will not allow us so easily because that is their money, because they control the networks. So this is another futuristic. DNS, domain name servers, we all heard. Domain name server is only for, I am www.ibm.com, I write, it goes to the DNS, find out the IP address, then my routing starts. But now you are telling I am clubbing my mobile handset with a telephone number and IP address. Who will solve that? Both if it's together. So both the domain servers will collapse, called as a enum. This is a new thing, enum. This enum is come from, there's a Telecom E.164 numbers, which is a standard from the, which merge the both the DNS, telephone network and the internet networks and come as enum directories, where all of us will be connected. This is the future, DNS. Now I am coming to the B for backbone. So what I talked to you is that all before is the access. One is your handheld device, what is the technology will change, what will happen in the access network from Piconets and Femtonets and or base stations, which is a larger areas coverage, and this is the DNS. And energy saved movements, mobility. Then backbone. Backbone is very interesting and very complex because of the speed and dedications. But one thing is clear, that which we know, optical medium has a higher bit rate, which Professor Ramani was talking about, carry capacity. If you go to optical networks and if you look at the fiber, it has a much more capacity to carry the bits than your electronics. So if that is true, you be in the optical domain till the end. If the moment I enter into the base station, from base station to next base station to my destination, I should be completely in the optical domain. I should not come back to electronics. The moment I come to electronics, I slows down. So as a result of which in the 90s, mid-90s, it was in the peak, the research was, 80s the people, physicists invented fiber, lasers for the communications, but 90s the engineers entered into that and they developed called optical transmitters. Those are all in gigabits, 40 gigabits, 80 gigabits now, people are talking about 100 gigabits, 100 gigabits, 10 to the power 9 is 1 gigabit into 100, so many bits per second coming out from a transmitter. Optical multiplexer, demultiplexer, I'll show you a couple of pictures, optical routing, optical switching, optical amplification, optical reception, optical buffers. So many research happened individually in all this direction to design the backbone of 90s happened, but now it is getting deployed. The complete optical, all optical networks. Before I enter into that, this is the classical electronics one. I enter this fiber terminates are here. If it is electronics, this is the receiver, receives the bits. Then it is the frames. Then the IP packet queue up at here. Then it sends the IP header routing algorithm runs at here, tells that, hey, this packet has to go on this direction. Then the command, the switch get connected. Then your packet goes. Simply goes one after the other. But this is the classical one which slows down. Everybody has an input buffers. And the buffer, if it slows, if packet queues up, then you have a chances of loss, you have delays and all kind of things. To overcome that, people said, no waiting, you should fly in to out. So this is the thing called optical networks, where I'll show you another picture in the next. Input fiber, this is the fiber, this is called demultiplexers, and there will be a, before they enter, there will be the command from the control plane, which direction this wavelength will go. No electronics. So let me show you one picture like this. These are called MEMS, Mem switches. These are nothing but mirrors. What happens to the mirrors? Look at this mirror. This mirror in this angle reflects the light in one direction. If I change the angle, it reflects the light in other direction. So look at this. If this is my input, if I put the mirror at here, I make it like this, and this mirror reflects the out on this output. If I change the angle at here, this output will go on these directions. So you are not at all coming down to the electronics domain. You came in the optical domain, and you went out in the optical domain on these directions due to the mirrors, because these are photons, these are the mirrors. So these are called all optical network, but it has a problem. It is not so simple. Why? Because the moment photons moves from a certain distance, there is a loss of energy, and that energy was added to the photon by called optical amplifiers. Inbuilt inside the fiber, they build the optical amplifiers, and that added the energy to the photon to go much longer distance. And these are the one complex switch I wanted to show you is this. This is a DMOX. These are lambdas are wavelengths. Sorry, from distance it lambda 0 to lambda 11, lambda 0 to lambda 11 means 12 wavelengths are coming in, and these are called these are called array wave guided routers. They routes to the which direction a particular packet should go, and they don't come to the electronics at all. In all optical, so you will be in the each wavelength will be going now say 40 gigabits per second, never comes down to the electronics and goes out in that same speed. What is the problem? Problem is, again the classical first slide I showed, that routers has to take a decision which direction to go in internet, but in telecom the control plane takes the decision where this will go beforehand. So telecom networks performance voice is much better than your voice over internet. So to overcome that, there is a paradigm shift happened on the internet recently called software defined network. This is tomorrow's backbone. This is tomorrow's backbone. What is that? That the concept of distributed protocol of internet, people say it is pretty slow. I cannot do business or commercial activity on this. I'll give you an example. The moment you write www.google.com, you go to Google very fast and come back. Then if you give any search, very fast and come back. How it happens? Now from your ISP, Google has a box interconnected, and 60% of the traffic Google controls, 60 plus. So Google has said, you see, I am controlling 60% of traffic because people come to me, so give me a space. And Google carries your request through his private network. That is not it's equivalent of SDN, not exactly SDN. So people started enjoying the speed of the internet without knowing that there is a private speedy networks is running parallelly along with your classical internet service providers. So all these things has been going on for last 2 years, pushed by top MNCs like Google and all. They said, hey, let us break the internet to two parts. One, bring it to one part is called classical telecom type, means make a control plane over the internet, and there will be switches like your telecom networks only forwarding the packets according to the command coming from the control plane. So that is called your paradigm shift, which is happening in internet from distributed concept to centrally controlled internet called software defined network. So again you are going back to the classical telecom, because telecom you have a completely control on the networks, you know the qualities and everything. So if this is your mobile handset, you are calling to the base station, from here you will come here, from here your call will go here, you will find out the path end to end and give the commands to the switches, then your calls goes, like your first picture I showed you on the telecom networks. So this is the tomorrow's or day after tomorrow's backbone networks, and now this has been deployed in the data centers only now, already deployed in data centers, but this will be deployed on the larger network. It will take time. And another very interesting, this is my last two slides. If you remember, in 1970s, we used to have IBM big boxes where the application, operating system and hardware was integrated. And then when later on you see the hardware means Intel, motherboard, all these things is different from the operating system or Microsoft or Linux or all kind of things, and the application is developed by somebody else, the operating system is developed by somebody else, this hardware is developed by somebody else. This one, what happened? This one leads to the breaking of the monopoly of these companies. This was a huge business shift, and IBM couldn't understand at that time. He stick to this, so he failed for a long time. Later on, he cashed up. But the thing is this. So same philosophy now. If you look at now, network is in this domain. Cisco has his hardware, Cisco has his operating system, Cisco has his own routing algorithm and applications, or Juniper has his own hardware, on Juniper has his own operating system, and Juniper has his own routing applications, which is available with Juniper. Both doesn't work. If I take Juniper's OS and put it on Cisco's hardware, it doesn't work. They are designed for themselves. So as a result of which now this software-defined network is trying to kill that and come out with this architecture exactly. So look at this. Application in the network means routing. Application means the routing required for a particular application, so developed by n number of companies. For UID, you can, or XYZ, you can develop different routings according to applications and put it at here. And this is called network OS, and controller will be developed by different companies, and hardware will be from the different companies. And this is called OpenFlow, which interconnects as a normal APIs. Like anybody's hardware, anybody's laptop I buy, whether HP or Intel or in Lenovo, but my operating system works. Any operating system works. So this one will act as a OpenFlow, will act as a link. This is tomorrow's routers. So I conclude with a couple of points. Classical internet will be bifurcated into two architectures: software-defined network and distributed. Classical distributed will be there, but it will be now software-defined networks. Time to come. The traffic growth will be upward spiral, stiff spiral. Moment wireless technologies matures to support 1 gigabits in LAN or Pico per access point or base station, 90% of the users will be on wireless. Only 10% will be on the fiber or copper. Backbone, 98% are already in the optical, and 2% is your satellites, or less than that. Power supply will be the main cause of failure of internet in many parts of the world, because even though we have a wonderful optical networks or Wi-Fi networks, no power. We tested that in India also. All peripheral networks stopped around 10 to 12 hours per day. Just you go out of the Bangalore, just go out of the Bangalore, 12 hours per day off. So whether so power, you have to think a lot of energy saving, new renewable, all kind of things. And scalability will be an issue with respect to the application QoS IP. So I showed you from exabit to gigabit is not far away. So the scalability with respect to the backbone, access point and all will be a point. And this is my last slide that touches all aspects of day-to-day life. Internet will be the next to the oxygen for survival. It is touching almost all things of our lives. From morning cup of tea, your newspaper, your anything you think of, your business, your office, your telecom network collapses on the internet means everything is finished now. Only one network will be there, is called internet. So, and it is touching, even though if our students don't give lunch, breakfast, they don't mind. If the internet gets disconnected, they mind. So that shows that how much dependency, that's the only thing, the dependency word, the moment it is dependent on something, then you feel suffocated when it is driven out. So the next to the oxygen, sometimes I feel within the 10 years. And these are the references. And any questions? Thank you very, very much, Professor Ramani, Professor Prabhu, and all of you coming and joining us for this such a great occasion. And thank you, Professor Rao, professors from IIT and all, for coming.